Hello, I'm Barnett Gilmer, CEO of Gulf Breeze Recovery. Welcome to another podcast. This podcast, we're going to continue touching on the subject of relapse and substitution. It's an extremely important topic, and it's just a topic that, I believe that you really can't talk enough about. Today, I have one of our intake counselors, Carle, and she can introduce herself.
I'm Carle. I'm the admissions coordinator at Gulf Breeze Recovery. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm going to go ahead and let Barnett get started.
And so, one of the big things that's out there right now, which obviously it should be, is the opioid crisis. And it's been a crisis that really began mid 2000s, most likely, 2000, mid 2000s, with the ongoing of prescription pain medication and overprescribing, that kind of thing. And then of course has worked its way up to heroin, and then now of course fentanyl, carfentanil. And so we just as a nation are continuing to progress, if you will, to stronger and stronger opioids. And so we just want to kind of touch on maybe what's going on here. There's other things that are happening also, like women who are now suffering with alcohol abuse, alcohol use disorder, if you will. And that number actually has doubled, more than doubled, according to the Centers for Disease Control, from 2002 until 2013, the most recent number that I saw. And so that's going on. And then the other thing that's kind of going on nationwide is an increase in the use of methamphetamines. And so, we've got a lot of things that are happening on a collective scale, if you will. And, the reason, that I've asked Alex to be with us is because she has a really unique story, concerning relapse, and also concerning, trying to get help, but really not addressing, the core underlying reason, if you will, that maybe that she had started using, and that kind of continued the use, and just kind of underscores what we've been talking about. But I don't want to tell her story, so I'll kind of let Alex talk a little bit about it.
Okay. So my drug abuse, and really it started with a need for validation and the misunderstanding of where my happiness was coming from as a child. And that really started my continual need and search to find something outside of myself to make me feel better and just really relate to people around me. And so I started enrolling in extracurricular activities, studying really hard, thinking that if I just made these A's, or if I got on this certain team, my parents would really be proud. And as I got older, it turned into wanting attention from, the opposite sex, or even just the popular group in school. And so that's where I started finding drugs as an outlet to become, that ideal person that I thought was acceptable in society. And so that's where I started smoking weed at first, and then drinking. This was to be able to go to parties and people to like me, and I thought that this is what made me feel like I was a whole person, that I was going to be okay and I was going to be happy if all of these people liked me. As I got older, the parties got harder, and so did the drug use. It went from heavy drinking to cocaine use, and then eventually I started using methamphetamine as well. Um, it was during this time that there was some abuse and some trauma that I had gone through, and never addressed it. Even in outside therapy, I was still seeking, I was still in the belief that the substances were what were going to numb my feelings, and they were going to make me be okay, and um, that I could function in society with those. That was the only way I knew how to do it. It wasn't until probably 2007 when my drug use had gotten really out of hand. And so I sought help through a treatment center. And in going to the treatment center, it was like a 9-month program. I had gone in. I was at that time addicted to heroin, to opiate, just pain pills. I was doing methamphetamine. I had added everything I could as a possible solution to my addiction problem. And what happened in treatment is they only took away my drugs. There wasn't any address of why I was seeking this in the first place. Why was I continuing to just use drugs as a coping mechanism? And I had no idea at the time that the underlying reasoning for that was probably the trauma and the abuse that I had gone through, and also feelings of unworthiness and inadequacy, that just not enoughness. I never felt like I was ever good enough unless I had, the cloak of the drugs to protect me. And so I left that treatment center and used immediately. I went right back to drugs because I didn't know how to deal with the problems that were there to begin with, that were the losing my kids. My family had kind of given up on me. There were a lot of factors that were just never addressed. And so again, my drug use just spiraled out of control. I continued to pick up and add on more substances because that's what I had come to believe was the only way out, the only way I had to deal with life. And as it got worse, I tried to do a few detox facilities, and those again, it was just detox. There wasn't any type of education on substances, or they just made me feel a little better, and I went right back out to doing the same thing. This happened again in 2012. I went to another treatment center, and this time I had gotten on, they continued to prescribe me more medication and more medication to get me off of the heroin and to get me off of the methamphetamine. And again, I was just trading one for another. I was never addressing any issues of what my reasons were for using in the first place. So I continued to use the maintenance drugs that they had prescribed me to. And then I found that I didn't really like the feeling that it was giving me. And so I went right back to using my drug of choice. I went right back to using heroin and was right back in the streets. And at this time, I had really lost all hope and had just come to the realization that I was probably going to be a drug addict for the rest of my life, and then that was the life that I was supposed to lead. I had given my kids up for the drugs. I had lost all contact with my family, and I had lost hope. It wasn't even about wanting to feel better about myself at this point. It was just trying to maintain some kind of a feeling that I never even got. I was always in search for after the first time I used, but I never got it again. It wasn't until I got to Gulf Breeze Recovery that I realized that feeling that I was searching for out there in the substances and the relationship and just the straight A's, that I was getting in school was inside me all along. It wasn't until I was able to actually get some one-on-one counseling and get to the core issue of my substance abuse and work through some of that trauma that I was able to gain an insight into me. I really I got to rediscover who Alex is, and hope was there again. I knew that I would have a chance to change and to do something different with my life. Because, like I said earlier, this is what I thought I was supposed to do. This is the hand life had dealt me, and I was okay with that. But I wasn't okay with it. I had been in and out of treatment so many times. My family had really given up on me, and this was, I was gonna do heroin and run the streets and be homeless for forever. But my forever I knew wasn't gonna be much longer. And it wasn't until it was about Christmas time, 2017, when so my whole family has struggled with addiction. And they have been reaching out to me for years, until I just kind of turned my back on them. And this was kind of a last ditch effort, really, to get me some help. And so they pulled together and came and got me, and I got that through them. I could see hope. And that was what I needed to just kind of have give myself the willingness and the chance to do this. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm so forever grateful for Gulf Breeze Recovery and how kind and how open they are and understanding of where I'd been and the revolving door of treatment and that relapse. That relapse happens, and we don't have to condemn ourselves to struggling with addiction for forever. This is something that we can face head on, and then put behind us. It's I think that's been so huge for me in moving forward with life today, is that I'm able to accept what I've gone through, and I appreciate what I've gone through, because it is those life experiences that have given me the perspective that I have on the world today. But I don't allow them to condemn me to a life of, being an addict and I don't have to, I don't have to go through, I don't have to allow my past to come and dictate how I'm going to live my future.
Your story, everybody's story is different. But it's just also is very reminiscent to what a lot of people go through. That people have come to us that have been to multiple treatment centers, or maybe one treatment center multiple times, uh, or a mixture in between. And they lose hope. The family loses hope. The family gives up on them. And to a certain extent, the family has somewhat earned the right, to give up. They don't know. They don't understand. They know that their loved one's been to treatment, that they don't know why it's not working. Uh, they've been to treatment and they're still choosing to use, and we need to wash our hands. And that does on the surface make a lot of sense. One of the issues that we see, and what we've been talking about in different podcasts, is that what people experience, with traditional, in the traditional model, if you will, of treatment, using an analogy of what separates us from the traditional treatment method that's out there. And the analogy that I want to use is one of a plant. In this analogy, we'll call what we see above the surface here as the observable behavior of addiction. So that would be the using, the scheming, the manipulation, the hiding, everything that goes on, with a person that is suffering from a substance use disorder. And so the roots, we're going to call the roots here internal unrest. And so that internal unrest could be, let's just say one of these roots might be depression. One may represent anxiety, even something as simple as maybe boredom. A lot of people that come, trauma could be one of them also. Traditional treatment, what they're basically looking at is chopping off the plant. Okay. Chopping off the observable behavior of addiction. But the problem is that when we're just concentrating on the observable behaviors of addiction, and we don't address the internal unrest, the root, cause, if you will, then we all know what happens when you have a plant that has fertile soil, firm roots in place. Well, the plant typically grows back. If we can focus on the root, and we can get the root to start to die away, to wither away, then all of a sudden the need to find something outside a solution, if you will, whether it be drugs, alcohol, whatever, goes away. And that's what makes us unique. It takes a little time. We're going to try to help get a person get to the root cause. What's going on, the trauma, just like you had mentioned, the wanting to be recognized. What's really going on with that drive to want to be recognized. And then I know, I can't remember if you had mentioned it just now or not, but some trauma, that had developed. And so when we don't address that, we've heard the term, drive drunk sometimes, and so a person, when they experience that, may not be using, but is still terribly unhappy, still searching, that kind of thing, and a lot of times it leads back to relapse. And so, we want to get to that issue, and getting to that issue takes resources. It takes time. It can't be there's just no such thing really as a quick fix with that. but we can get through it, and we can get through it in a reasonable amount of time and help a person to really to see, for the first time, insightfully see, what's going on. And so, yeah, Alex, your story is beautiful, and it beautifully illustrates, what we've been, talking about for several podcasts now. Can I ask you, how many treatment facilities did you go through? How long a span did this?
So the revolving door of treatment centers that I had gone through, I had done detox at 3 different state facilities, and then I went to a 45-day program and also a 9-month program, but it was at the same facility, and I did that twice. So I'd been in and out of treatment about five or 6 times.
Yep. And you had touched on medication. Mm-hmm. That when you had went, that you were given medication, and that it was for you maybe somewhat of a substitution. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that when we had talked before that you had even mentioned something about even selling some of that medication on the street.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that?
So when I went to the 45-day program, I had this idea that the cravings were going to be so bad, and I wasn't going to be able to handle being off of a substance. And so they had agreed to put me on a maintenance medication of Suboxone. And then about a week after taking the Suboxone, I couldn't focus, and I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't really present in the daily activities that I was trying to be productive in. And so I got put on Ritalin. It worked for a brief period of time, and brief period of time, I mean like a month, before I was ready to, I knew my solution, that had worked in the past was the heroin and the methamphetamine. And so I went to selling the Suboxone on the street and also the Ritalin to get what I really wanted. And that was the heroin. And so my heroin addiction just picked right back up.
You had used the word solution. And I'm sure at the time, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just kind of paraphrasing here, but I don't know did you at the time think, my solution, needs to be this, that, and the other, or was it just something that you did because it was what you're used to doing?
So I think I had a really common misconception actually of where solutions came from. It was kind of something that had become a habit even as an adolescent, that you take this pill, you'll feel better. If you take, I had presented as having some depressive disorder, and so I got put on antidepressants at a really young age. And because of that, it was, told to me that I had to take this medication in order to be normal, in order to be a part of, and be able to participate with, classes or my peers. And so it was that habit that formed pretty young. And so I was always seeking the next pill, the next drug, the next thing that was going to make me fit in and feel okay. And so that's where my belief came from, is that I needed something outside of myself. A solution was only obtainable out here. I had no idea that the solution was in me, and that I could find it inside me all along.
Yeah, I know, for a lot of people, and myself included, for years, that the concept of the solution is inside me is foreign. At least for me it was,
Mm-hmm.
and for a lot of people, and a lot of people that come in the center. Uh, but it's amazing what happens when all of a sudden something kind of clicks, and it. Okay, bam! Now I see. You know. And so then all of a sudden that concept doesn't get foreign. It's not foreign anymore, I should say. Yeah, that it now becomes a concept that has some truth behind it, some teeth behind it, if you will. But it takes getting there first, and that's when the therapy, the one-on-one therapy, you know all the things that go on in the program that's leading a person to you know uh, and so that's it's a good thing, and that's kind of the difference, if you will, that it takes those resources for to help a person to get beyond addiction. Let's just say it like it is. I mean, it it takes some work and time, effort, therapeutic resources to get there. But the end result of getting there is wonderful. The view is definitely worth the climb, and so you know countless times, and you're such a beautiful, once again, a beautiful example of where the family has given up on somebody, and then all of a sudden, bam, I've got my daughter back, I've got my son back, I've got my husband back, I've got my wife back, whatever, but I've got my loved one back. uh, and we see it time and time again, and I'm sure your family has felt the same thing. You certainly talk about it.
Yeah. It's indescribable, the relationship that I have with my family today. It was, and even thinking back as a kid, it's not even, it's completely different, because I have this understanding of who I am today, and being able to relate to them on a just a different level of, and I say confidence, but growing up with low self-esteem and insecurities, I never felt like I was adequate enough to be a part of the family, and so I was always trying to show out, and perform, and just be this completely fake person that I wasn't. And today I get to be Alex again, and see that they're genuine. My just being genuine with my family, their love, you feel the love. It's not, I think, even too, with trying to perform and be something different, you don't even accept love that you get, because then it's not for you as that person, if that makes any sense. And so today, just to be around them, and to know as well that they have come through their addictions, and been able to move on with their lives, and they just have so much. It's just, like I said, it's indescribable. It's a really neat, unique gift, and I'm just really grateful to have it today.
It just sounds like to me, through your struggles, that and once again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that there was this effort to deal with someone who was broken. Okay, And I know we get it a lot. The people really do believe that they're broken. They've been through multiple centers. They've been through treatment a few times. Uh, Things in their life haven't gone very well. And so they feel broken. The family, feels that their loved one is broken, that something is wrong. And it's so amazing, that, here we are speaking with someone who at that time maybe seemed to be broken, but you're not. And that's one of the things that we try to, help people that come through the center to see that they're not broken. But when they first get there, they have a hard time believing it. And so, it's really a beautiful story that does illustrate that even though, a person goes through, some horrific things and a long, hard struggle, with substance use disorder, poly, if you will, that there is always hope on the other side. And, once a person can really acknowledge the underlying issues, that, things change for them, and that they're not a broken soul out there, that they really have had everything they need, but just like in most cases, have been a little lost. Mm-hmm. And so, I know I've said it 2 or 3 times. I'll say it again, though, that it is a beautiful story. It really is. And so I think, that pretty much wraps everything up, for this podcast. And once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us. And until next time.
Till next time. Thank you.